I make it 6 o'clock now. Could we all take our seats, please? Thank you. I think I have to ask for apologies first of all, don't I? Do we have apologies, please?
Through you, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Helen Froggatt, Councillor Laura Melstrom and Councillor Peter O'Brien.
Thank you. Well, we gather with one item on the agenda tonight, which is a hugely significant one. It's part of a historic process which we are involved in, whether we like it or not. I'm going to ask Paul Wilson to introduce the report first of all, before perhaps I say a few other things and then open the debate. So, Paul, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, the report before members this evening considers the case for change for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire, and the specific ask of Council is to identify its preferred option as part of that process. The report also seeks a degree of delegated authority to myself as Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to agree any necessary minor or technical amendments to the proposal prior to the eventual submission to the Secretary of State within the requisite deadline of 28th of November. Members will be aware that in the past few weeks we've held two very detailed briefings on this hugely significant topic, and I'd like to thank those members for taking the time to attend those briefings and hope that they were of value to you as you debate this important issue this evening. In terms of the report before you, I'm not going to go in detail through the case for change. I think it's self-explanatory within the documentation that's contained within the appendix, but just to recap, the 8 district and borough councils alongside Derby City Council have been working collaboratively on this proposal for the past few months. Members will be aware that Derbyshire County Council is pursuing a separate proposal which was publicised yesterday. In terms of the proposal before you this evening, there are 4 possible options which have been identified, all of which relate to the formation of 2 new unitary councils on a north-south split of the county. The evidence base also indicates the strengths and weaknesses, if you like, of each of those options. Effectively, you've got the base options of option A and the base option of B. Option A is for Amber Valley to be included in a northern unitary. Option B is for Amber Valley to be placed in the southern unitary. Option A1 and B1 basically split Amber Valley Borough, but in different locations, and that's again explained within the documentation. All 4 options have been appraised comprehensively as part of the proposed development, and the strengths and the financial analysis is included within Appendix B on pages 161 to 191 of the proposal. As I say, I don't intend to go through that in detail, but members have been appraised of that and have had that document for a little while. The key ask of Council, therefore, is to consider which option it favours, option A or option B, based upon whole district building blocks, or, in addition to that, there is the proposal outlined A1 and B1, which would require the Secretary of State being requested to exercise his powers to undertake a modification. So they're the 4 options which are outlined in the paper. The legal advice and the implications of those options is clearly explained in section 8 of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions that members may have, Chair.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for topping and tailing that hugely lengthy report. So, questions, please, from members, first of all. Councillor Buttle.
Thank you. Does Amber Valley have an opinion?
Thank you, Chair. Amber Valley Borough Council has published its report in the same way that this council has, and that report recommends that their members favour option A.
Councillor G.
Could I just correct that? Because Amber Valley are having a meeting in unison with us tonight, and their council is going to make a decision at the same time as us. So can you really say which option Amber Valley favours, given the fact that they haven't had a chance to vote on it yet?
Chair, the difference with the report that's being presented to Amber Valley members is that that does include a positive officer recommendation of option A. Clearly, members of Amber Valley Borough Council will have regard to that report and they will make their decision accordingly. This council doesn't have a report before it which recommends any particular option, so I was merely drawing attention to the fact that there is a positive recommendation in the Amber Valley report, but clearly it's for them members to decide.
Thank you for pointing that out. Councillor Martin Burford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, actually. First of all, who can be confident that 10 months will be adequate time for all the transitional arrangements to be undertaken and finally agreed by a council of over 100 members? And if approved by all 9 existing councils, will the final decision, will that be the final decision, or yet again, as with contentious planning applications, or planning decisions rather, will it be left to the Secretary of State to come up with his own interpretation of what people locally in Derbyshire have actually said?
Okay, Paul, I don't know if you're able to advise on that length of time and a comment on the Secretary of State's likely views.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the time frame, clearly that time frame is being dictated by government. There are authorities who are going through this process who are on a slightly different time frame, notably Surrey, who are in the devolution priority programme, and they are looking to have their vesting day on the 1st of April 2027. Clearly there is an awful lot of work to be undertaken in order to meet that timetable, but that is the timetable government is imposing upon authorities as part of the current proposals. In terms of the actual decision-making process, the way the legislation is currently established is that the Secretary of State, once he receives the proposals that we are debating this evening, will then subject that to a process of consultation, and then it will be for the Secretary of State to determine the ultimate decision that they consider before implementation thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
And the second question, what are the implications for High Peak Borough Council's ongoing shared service arrangements with Staffordshire Moorlands District Council?
Those shared arrangements would have to be disbanded.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. We're making a we may make a recommendation tonight. Other councils may make different recommendations. How will that information be communicated to the Secretary of State so that the government can decide between the different options that are put forward, given that it's very likely that at least 2 options will be put forward from this meeting, from the meetings at District Councils and Derbyshire City Council, and there will also be the County Council proposal as well.
Do we know anything about that, Paul?
Yes, Chair. So in terms of the document that will be submitted, there will be a covering letter which will be submitted on behalf of all districts, boroughs and the city. That covering letter will draw attention to the individual decisions made by the respective districts and boroughs, and within the submission document itself there is an intention to indicate by signature and logo against the relevant option that that council has moved to identify as its preferred option.
Councillor G again.
Yeah, I was I wouldn't say I was astonished, but reading Derby Live yesterday when it came out that Derbyshire County Council are putting an option for 1 council in Derbyshire. Now, throughout this process, at various meetings, I think myself and we at Derbyshire First have asked the question why the option of 1 council in Derbyshire couldn't be put as an option alongside this, because to me it looks like we're being offered like a George Ford option. Now, I was told that it just didn't fit in with the criteria. So are you telling me that officers at Derbyshire County Council who've gone through a scrutiny process and created a package to put to the government have decided that one council for Derbyshire, including Derby City, is suitable and does fit into the criteria, but we at Derbyshire Dales District Council are not being given the option whether to support that or not? We're being given a much poorer option, which is basically 4 options of 2 councils, none of which really change much as far as we're concerned. They only change to Amber Valley because it could involve splitting Amber Valley. But one council for Derbyshire would involve not splitting any of the current areas. And it obviously is an option that's considered to be suitable to put to the government. So I'd like to ask why, again, that option wasn't given to us, because I think it should have been.
So there's a question about the criteria and the evidence base.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Section 4 of the proposal document outlines clearly the process that we've gone through collectively in terms of not only the identification of potential options, of which there were 15, but also the process that working with KPMG has been applied in order to refine that down to the 4 options before you. The option of a single unitary Derbyshire is not an option that was favoured amongst any of the leaders of the respective councils during that process.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Option A, it will make Maybe it's more people in. If you go for option A, there's more people in the north than what there's in the south residents. A1 is a balanced option, and probably B1 is a balanced option. So I'm quite surprised that Amber Valley have recommended that they're going for A1, because it's not a. It's a very unbalanced entity, A1, in population.
Okay, that sounds like an observation. We obviously can't comment on how Amber Valley are going to make their decisions tonight. The question about balance is one of those things. I'm sure, Paul, you don't mind me saying so, that if you look at the table that's in the covering report, this one, table 1, it shows all of the different factors involved there. Did I see another hand? Councillor Hobson, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. I think our residents will want to see the best option for them in relation to the costs of their council tax and the impact on local services. Obviously, we have these options on the table, and you will have seen the proposal put forward by Derbyshire County Council, which actually gives annual savings after 2031-32 of 45.1 million, which dwarfs the annual savings of the unitary options. Is Karen or Paul able to comment on that, please?
Good question. Karen, would you like to?
Well, I haven't seen the county's report, and I don't know the basis of their calculations, but I can only assume that they're reasonably accurate. My other comment would be that cost is not the only factor. We don't know what other things they've taken into account. Members, you know, rather than just considering what their council tax might be in a particular area, you might want to think about the democracy and how local villages would be represented in a one council unitary.
Paul would like to add something, I think.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Only because I have read the County Council's submission, and the difference is that the County Council have assumed a lower annual saving on the 2 unitary option than we've identified. The difference in our proposal is actually that the annual savings from your year 6 are £44 million a year, so it's only £1 million difference. They've applied a different assumption to the costs of disaggregation and running those 2 unitary councils. That's the only difference in the case. But overall, if you're looking purely at finances, our case is equally as beneficial to taxpayers as the County Council's case.
Can I just come back, Chair? But as not as a, I'm not a finance expert, but do you not agree that it is perhaps confusing for councillors making this decision this evening?
Well, we're here to consider the proposal before you. We're not here to debate or consider the County Council's proposal, because clearly we haven't been party to the formulation of that, and the County Council likewise will not consider our proposal. I think ultimately that's a job for the Secretary of State and his advisors to determine which is the best option to move forward with.
Okay, I've got 3 hands in the air for questions at the moment. Councillor Wayne, I think you were first.
Thank you. I think the figures that are being put forward as savings are drops in the ocean, to be perfectly honest, for the upheaval and disruption that it will cause to everybody and every member of Derbyshire. That's what my personal view is. But the questions I want to ask are, I mean, it was something the other night, I had a bit of a giggle at this really, because it was harmonisation, and it's to do with council tax, and that Derbyshire Dales District Council residents currently pay the highest rate of council tax, and everybody else in the area, in the northern area, will have to go up to Derbyshire Dales levels of council tax. So they will have to go up there. And I was just thinking of the word harmonisation, because there isn't going to be a lot of harmony in North Derbyshire, Bolsover and Chesterfield when they find out that theirs are going to have to come up to ours. And I don't think the government have fully researched that and understand that. So there's going to be some hard talk for that. My question is, can this organisation, as part of harmonisation, could we, as the council, offer some sort of, not direct compensation, but could we, in the preceding 2 years before the actual vote, offer some sort of benefit to our district council, council members, in holding the council tax down? So our members within our area we're suppressing that so that the other areas don't have to go as high, but we don't have to pay as much. I think we owe that to our communities. It's our communities' money that is in our coffers at the moment, and they should get some reward from it. So is that possible, please?
Very interesting question. Is that Paul or Karen?
I'll take that one. Council tax harmonisation involves the new unitary council, so this will be a decision for them at that time, setting council tax rates across the former districts and boroughs. In order to achieve equity across the whole of the new area, the intention is that they would harmonise so that eventually they all pay the same. Now, the harmonisation doesn't have to be at the top. It could be at the median level. It could even be at the bottom. The modelling that we've done for this submission assumes that it will be at the top. If we were to freeze the council tax for Derbyshire Dales District Council for the next 2 years, that would result in a potential loss of council tax income of £232,000 in 26-27 and £471,000 in 27-28, assuming that we would have applied the maximum 2.99% increase. So it's a significant amount over the 2 years. One of the things you need to bear in mind is that that decision will have an impact on Derbyshire Dales District Council's financial position in that time. So the medium-term financial plan already shows that we have deficits from 26-27 onwards because of our expectations from the government's funding review. If you're going to lose £232,000 next year and £471,000 the year after that, on top of the deficit we've already got, then members are going to be faced with some very difficult decisions on how to balance the budget for those years. You know, you might have to decide which services you're going to reduce, and that will have an impact on our residents. Yes, you could argue, let's take some money out of reserves, but that will remove our ability to withstand any financial shocks that might come our way. In addition to that, when we do set the budget and the council tax, you'll know from previous financial settlements that the government assumes we will set the maximum increase that's permitted under the referendum limits. If we chose to freeze the council tax and not apply that increase, it sends the message to the government that we don't really need that money. And I'm sure they'll reflect on that when they're looking at our grant allocation. And I'm concerned that they would reduce future grant awards. And the next point I'd like to make is that the government's not due to take the decision on LGR until next summer. And even then, there's a possibility that it might be abandoned or delayed. So if this council chooses to go on a spending spree, use up reserves or freeze council tax in the meantime, as I say, we're going to face very difficult decisions from then on that would only get worse over time. Because once you freeze the council tax, you reduce the base for that year onwards. And the final point I'd like to make is that applying a council tax freeze would not only affect Derbyshire Dales District Council, but it would significantly affect the new unitary councils. As I said, the financial proposal assumes harmonisation at the top, which generates a lot of additional income. I think there's page 58 of Appendix B in the pack shows that the additional income from council tax harmonisation would be £36 million in year one, rising to £43 million in year three. If that or part of that was put in jeopardy, then the new unitary council would also face a problem in balancing its budget. That would also have to consider service cuts, which again would impact on our residents. And I would point out that the modelling indicates that council tax harmonisation is possible in year one of the new unitary council. So the scenario that we're talking about where some parts of the new unitary area may pay different council taxes in others doesn't necessarily have to occur in year one. It is possible that the new unitary council could decide to harmonise in year one.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just come back.
Yes.
To me, it just seems that volume of money, that amount of money, it just seems a very small amount of money. And it is, my view is that it is what has been put in by our residents, and we should look after our residents. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for your reply, Karen.
Okay. I've got Councillor Bond next.
Thank you, Chair. I've been busy studying Table 1, Strategic Assessment of Options and Weightings. And this might feel like a simplistic question, and I might have a follow-up depending on the answer. I'm wondering if there is one option that is simpler to implement clearly in the first 6 months. Is that possible to give an answer to that?
I think, Chair, given that, well, the simple answer is I don't think there is. And the reason I say that is because clearly when we are looking to create unitary councils, the degree of disaggregation, not just between districts and boroughs, but the county and the city is the complicating factor, particularly when you look at social care, children's services. At the moment, county services don't operate on district boundaries, or they're not confined to district boundaries. You've got different operating models between north and south. Clearly, you've got the complexities of trying to disaggregate and then reform waste collection services. So I don't believe that because of all of those types of factors that any one option is any easier than another one. The degrees of complexity clearly intensify when you do look at splitting district boundaries, but overall I don't think there's a more straightforward option.
Okay. Just as a quick follow-on, and I wasn't sure what the answer might be, but I guessed it would be that. Is there any particular material risk that would make any of these choices irresponsible? Now, that might be a hard one to answer too, but is there?
The assessment has indicated that all 4 options comply with government's criteria. Clearly, in terms of the accuracy of what are predictions at the moment, that will change, and many factors will change on that issue between now and LGR being implemented, not least the fair funding reforms which are coming forward in the next financial year, and also just general changes within the cost of delivering services. So all of the options are considered to meet the government's criteria, but I think the one certainty is that the predictions will not be 100% accurate. They are only predictions at this stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor... No, okay. Councillor Susan Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I've read somewhere that the cost of LGR, which is an enormous amount of money, will eat up over 2/3 of the available 90 million reserves that are held across the 10 Derbyshire councils. Is that correct?
Well, the detail is included within the Appendix 2 of the document, and that does look at the amount of reserves that are currently held, the costs of the LGR process, which clearly do not become self-financing until you get into the year 6. So it's fair to say that in the first 3 years there will be very significant costs, and the savings will gradually start to increase thereafter. But again, these are predictions based upon the information that we currently have.
Thank you.
Councillor G, did you have another question?
It's all right.
Councillor Wayne.
Can I just clarify something from Gareth's question, actually, about the one council actual proposal, the county? Are we saying that Derbyshire County Council are flogging a dead horse then?
I don't think that's for me to comment.
It just seems a total waste of time doing it if it doesn't fit the criteria. That's all I'm saying. If you had anything to say, thanks.
It's a very fair observation, I think. Councillor White.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Karen. I just wonder, Paul, could you maybe just set out to us some of the benefits of option A with a larger population, and maybe some of the challenges as well in terms of the demographics we should be looking at in terms of how the new council forms and what might cause us pinch points in terms of either having a too old a population or a too big a send population. Is there anything you can tell us about the different options in those terms? And maybe a little bit, and I'm presuming option A is the preferred option, is it, or is there no preferred option?
I've not identified a preferred option from an officer perspective within the report because, as I stated at the briefing a week or so ago, all of the options comply with the criteria, and I think it's a decision not for an officer to put forward or recommendation, but for you as elected representatives to form a view as to which option you think is best for the Derbyshire Dales communities. But given that your question was directed at option A specifically, clearly there are advantages to option A, particularly in terms of the GVA, which is pretty balanced between the northern and the southern unitary. Some of the key factors that I would encourage members to have regard to in thinking through these options is, if one bears in mind where are the real cost pressures in unitary councils and district and borough councils. So in unitary councils and county councils, the cost pressures are children's services and social care. In district and borough councils, the cost pressures are waste collection and homelessness. So the factors regarding the percentage of population 65 plus, that is a relevant criteria to have some regard to, and likewise the homelessness rates and the percentage of children in relatively low income families. And you can see in the table the various scores that have been attributed to those factors. But I think it's fair to say that for all four options there are strengths and weaknesses. There isn't a perfect option. And I think that makes the issue particularly challenging for members, but the reason why I think this is clearly a member decision rather than an officer recommendation based upon an assessment of the matrix itself.
Councillor G.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to come back because Steve just made a statement there that the one council option is assumed not to fit the criteria, but obviously the criteria is open to opinion because, you know, otherwise they wouldn't put it and their officers wouldn't put it because I can't personally see, when I read the article about it, it does fit the criteria. So it's not fair to actually make a statement and almost laugh it off that that option doesn't fit the criteria. Because we're getting mixed messages here. Karen's just admitted that this might come to next summer and the whole process could be abandoned. But on the one hand, it was introduced in a historic moment where we're going to change the councils in Derbyshire and abandon what we've got at the moment, which personally I think works pretty well. But then we might go through all this arduous process and then it's abandoned. So, you've got, you know, we're here making difficult decisions on behalf of the residents of Derbyshire. So, you know, when you speak to us, we listen intently.
You have a question?
Very, very difficult for us. You know, if it's abandoned, then we're back to square one. We're where we are now, which probably for most of us would be good. You know, I read the article, all the councillors in South Derbyshire, most of them seemed to not support the thing at all. And they decided that they were just turkeys voting for Christmas. Well, I'm not going to be a turkey voting for Christmas. I want to make a serious decision on this. So be careful, you know, the comments that are made, please.
Is that a question in any shape?
Well, it's just, it might come later, sorry. Might come later back to the point. But,
sounds
you know,
more like a
but
speech.
at the end of the day, Derbyshire County Council, no doubt they've got some seriously minded officers who've appraised the option they're going to put to government, and it must fit the criteria, because otherwise it wouldn't be on the table. So to make a statement that it doesn't fit the criteria, we've heard the issue about population.
Is this a question about...
No, but I'm just trying to level the floor slightly.
No, I'm just trying to get to
a
point where we can answer.
Does the Derbyshire County Council option fit the criteria? And have you actually got any evidence to say it doesn't?
All right, okay, I think that is a question.
I don't think that's a decision for me, Chair. I'm not here to explain or justify the Derbyshire County Council option because that's not an option the districts and boroughs have decided to put forward. And I don't think anybody expressed an opinion to discredit the County Council's option. Clearly that's an option that they feel is appropriate and they're entitled to put that forward. But I'm not here to justify that, and it's not a proposal that this council's been asked to consider this evening.
Okay. Councillor Whitehead.
Thanks, sir. So just on the one council thing, because I'm sure we'll get into debate in terms of it seems like a crazy big area to me, and I love Derbyshire, but we don't lose the identity of Derbyshire just because we have a north and south. We're already seeing this in other county councils. But my question, Paul, is what is the biggest unitary council in the country?
Birmingham City Council.
So Birmingham's a big metropolitan city area. So if we looked at somewhere a bit closer to our sort of demographic, if we looked at North Yorkshire, which is a unitary council, isn't it? There's a population of 650,000. Basically, there's no rural-based kind of areas that have a unitary authority anywhere near the size that Derbyshire County Council would be as one area. And to try and run services across that would be unmanageable.
You're absolutely right. There is no unitary council covering the type of geography of Derbyshire across that sort of population scale. And the issue of delivering services across that challenging geography was one of the key factors that was considered when leaders, chief execs and KPMG, based on their experience, looked at the options to be put forward. Clearly Derbyshire County Council have a different view. They're entitled to exercise that view.
All right, Councillor Dobbs.
Chair, or indeed County Councillors present, could you confirm that actually in their July debate, when they were putting forward schemes for consultation, Derbyshire County Council didn't have this scheme in what they sent out to consultation?
I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah. No other questions? Okay, well, thank you for those. In which case we move on to the recommendations in front of us and debate. So there are 4 recommendations that you've got in front of you. You can see them there on page 1. Do we have anyone who would like to propose those? Councillor Flitter.
Thank you. It's going to be no surprise, I told people last week in the briefing the way that I was thinking. But just to put this in context, not everyone wants LGR, especially Liberal Democrats certainly don't want LGR, and we don't share the government's logic for change. But in fact, we are where we are, and we are going to have this forced upon us, and so we have to get the best that we possibly can and work together. But many people I've spoken to have said, why change what's working well? And that's been backed up by figures that show quite clearly that more people support the notion that Derbyshire Dales District Council is rated one of the best in its effectiveness and satisfaction of services that we administer. And I've also seen a number of people in different parties, a mixture of support and dissatisfaction through the whole political parties. So, in the beginning, all Derbyshire Dales District leaders had a strong vision, a united vision, enhancing the lives of our residents and protecting our rural treasures. And that was right the way through the leadership, because that's what we all believed in. And we were asked to put a case for change without any benchmarks, any supporting foundations, except the building blocks of district boundaries. But then came moving of the goalposts, as we saw it, by introducing parish boundaries. And that would have to be examined separately by the Boundary Commission. And discussions seem to disappear and go downhill from there. So what we've been looking at out of this new direction of travel in local government has been what is the best possible outcome for the people of Derbyshire Dales. Not of Amber Valley, not of North East, not of South Derbyshire, but for my job was to look for the best we could get from the Derbyshire Dales. And I do not want to see a dormant, struggling Derbyshire Dales amidst a poorly funded North Derbyshire. I do not want to see a disadvantaged business sector because of the lack of opportunities. I don't want to see communities trapped and denied life's opportunities by having to just rely on outreach services that are equally underfunded. The points of contention between A and A1 or B1, because one is an ideal, the other one is a go-between, what we would accept. And the battleground, which has become known as Belper, whether that should be in the north or in the south. And I have heard arguments about Belper naturally facing Derby. But isn't that obvious? That's an obvious statement. With a city full of services, of course people are going to be drawn towards Derby rather than the north. But at what cost? At what cost to Derbyshire Dales residents? And that's where is the basis of all what I've been listening to. You know, I want to protect the communities that we serve. But what does it mean, Belper mean to people here? It does allow Derby to grow in A1, in the south of Amber Valley. It does allow them to grow. But if you take away the loss of council tax and business rates from the north in Belper, you're talking 42.3 million pounds, which could be used in the northern area to address, you know, the rural deprivation, a lot of which people don't understand that don't live in a rural area. Connectivity, which is a big thing at the moment, and that isn't being addressed very successfully at the moment. Creating local employment, balancing our green agenda, all these things which that money could go towards, and yet we've been denied of that if we go for B and B1. And it should be noted, by the way, that option B has never been out to consultation. Option A has, and option A is favoured by 4 out of 6 of your northern partners, which would form part of northern Derbyshire. We talk about, Councillor G is right in one respect when he talks about the criteria, because my concerns are within the criteria that that does worry me is the possibility of withstanding shocks of any transition. I don't think we are covered without that monies, that we can survive those shocks, and it would make a big difference in our council tax and our ways of working. I don't think that people have understood working together and understanding the individual problems. It's been forced upon us to try and realise what city status means, but nobody is working towards a rural area, of which I want to protect. And stronger communities. I don't think enough work has been done really on looking at neighbourhood empowerment, because under a scheme of cabinet government, it doesn't have any real power. So don't let's get ahead of ourselves, because there are lots in there that have to be worked upon. This may not be the final document, but the principle has to remain the same. So what I'm going to recommend to this council is that this council supports our preferred option to LGR, that is A1, and that B, this council delegates authority to the Chief Exec to submit the council's decision for the preferred option to the local government review in Derbyshire to the State Secretary on and before the 28th of November 25. And C, that this council delegates authority to the Chief Exec in consultation with the leader of the council to make any minor or technical amendments to the proposal prior to its submission on that 28th of November. That I would like to move, Chair, and I really do wish that we could have a good, positive debate and come out with the best option of what we feel for the Derbyshire Dales, and that has to be the priority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just before I seek a seconder to that, and I've got a couple of hands up here, I'd just like to sort of echo 1 or 2 points, which is really that members during this debate that we're now entering into should focus on what's in front of them in the paper here, particularly the evidence base, and to reflect on what's likely to be best for our residents and businesses and for the wider county. And I'm really looking for members to, unless you're proposing and seconding a motion, to stick to one speech, and then if there is comment from somebody back aimed at you, to have one right of reply to that, because I suspect there could be a fair number of people who want to speak on this. So I'm going to go to the first pair of hands I saw, which was actually Councillor Dobbs. Yes. Are you seconding?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second, and I reserve the right to return and comment later in debate. Thank you.
That's right. Yes. Okay. I've also just been reminded that Councillor Archer and Councillor Buckler unfortunately were late arriving at the meeting. I believe that means, unfortunately, that you're very welcome to speak, but I don't believe you're able to vote in the final vote. So my apologies. Okay. Councillor Butler, I think you had your hand up.
I did. Yeah. I was going to offer a second. Somewhat qualified by the fact I'm pretty dubious about local government reorganisation and the motivation behind it and the likelihood that it'll save any money over the first decade. But, I guess Labour wants to do its thing and it wants to rationalise, and these things come along every 50 years. So I was going to moan on a bit before I actually said, yes, let's go for this. But I shan't. I shall trust Steve and Paul to represent us with wisdom and thought.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
Thank you. I've thought long and hard about this. I am in favour of unitary. I always have been. I worked for a very large region, Strathclyde region. And when Strathclyde broke down, was split up into, and all the responsibilities was passed out to the individual local authorities that Strathclyde held the budgets and everything for, I was utterly shocked. I worked for a very rural area, Argyll and Bute Council. It's very rural, very similar to this in many ways, the area we're in now. We had the large city of Glasgow and also larger areas with big conurbations like Dumbarton in Dumbartonshire. I'll give you some examples to think about, because this really emphasises how we need to protect our rural services if this all-in-one with the big city of Derby is also included in our area. Services for under fives. Glasgow City Council were allocated about £130 per child per year. Dumbartonshire allocated £80 odd a year, maybe £89 a year. Argyll and Bute, £7 a year. We had no nurseries. All the money went to the conurbations. We could afford to provide no services at all, and we had 2 part-time staff answering the phone telling people, sorry, we don't have any. And this severely, I worked in the area of children's services and child protection. It severely affected the services we could offer to help in child protection plans until we got that money ourselves and we had our equal share of money. Another example was in working with young offenders. And the money that was allocated for group work, we didn't even know we'd been allocated to group workers because they were siphoned off to one of the larger conurbations in Dumbartonshire. And until the day it split up, and then 2 people walked into the office and said, oh, we're your group workers. We've been allocated to Argyll and Bute. And we never knew there was a budget there. Part of this was the lack of representation that the rural areas had, because the majority of people that made up the cabinets that ran Strathclyde region came from, the majority were based in the cities, based in the conurbations. We had very poor representation from our rural area. And there was no acknowledgement of the need of the people in the rural area. We were just considered, oh, you don't have child protection issues, you're just the seaside social workers. And we'll get the same attitudes. Not immediately, but I can see within a few years we'll be losing money hand over fist, which is we currently have to the conurbations. and to Derby City particularly. Thank you.
Thank you. An alarming prospect. I've got Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Marilyn, I hear what you say. I'm on the EMCA Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and one of the things that we've been looking at is the inclusive growth framework that EMCA has produced. And the inclusive growth framework suggests that Derbyshire Dales is just a tourist backwater or a dormitory for the larger conurbations. So I think we already have some of that thinking, Marilyn, occurring in the East Midlands, and I'd hate for the eastern districts in the northern part of the Northern Unitary Authority, which are perhaps more urban than Derbyshire Dales, High Peak, and possibly Amber Valley. Parts of Amber Valley, for them to, as you say, siphon off funding for some of the services that we get funded for now. We have already seen this in EMCA, where funding that came straight from government to Derbyshire Dales is now directed through EMCA, and some of it is taken away from Derbyshire Dales and is used for EMCA projects rather than Derbyshire Dales projects. So it is of great concern to me that Derbyshire Dales will lose some of its autonomy and ability to provide services under this new unitary authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, did you have your hand up?
I'll speak. I was going to put my hand up, but I hadn't. I was just thinking about doing it.
Could you make your mind up, please?
I'll do it. Go on. Well, I suppose I've been on quite a journey with this, because before I became a district councillor, and having lived sort of in city areas and sort of been under unitary authorities, when I moved to Derbyshire, I couldn't actually believe, in my mind, I thought, what an absolute waste of money, this three-tier kind of government, parish, district, county, all that waste, all that inefficiency, all that confusion within the public in terms of who do I go to sort of raise my concerns. They always come to me. Never go to the county councillor. But I suppose what kind of, since becoming a district councillor, I suppose my views have changed quite a lot on it. Because what I've come to value is having a small ward, get to know your residents, get to know the place that you live, be responsive to the issues that come up, defend and support your population as best you can, because you're part of that community. And so I really do see the value of this sort of government in terms of kind of that connection and why that's important in a way that I never used to realise. But I understand things can't stay the same. And I do kind of value kind of the efficiencies that unitaries could bring to us. But I do kind of hear the points in terms of we must be careful in terms of how we keep those local connections, which are really vital. But in terms of the options, I think when I'd read through the pack and we had the briefing last week, in my mind it was always going to be option one, because when I looked at the feedback from Amber Valley, that's what the public wanted in the consultation by majority. Kind of Paul's told us the recommendation go to the council. So I was just a bit puzzled why Steve has asked for option 1A. Is that a different option?
A is different to A1.
So in my mind, is that's splitting Amber Valley then, option A1. So I'm a bit puzzled because when we started this kind of process and we were having bits of feedback and it was mooted that Derbyshire Dales could be split in half, I think everyone was in uproar about how disrespectful that was to our communities and our history and our legacy. And yet we're going to vote for an option that does exactly that to Amber Valley, against the wishes of Amber Valley. I'm really, really puzzled. And So it's almost a question to Steve, who I respect greatly. But I'm really puzzled, Steve, why we would vote for something that's splitted an authority against their will. And I don't know how their politicians are going to vote tonight, but I've seen what their public wanted, and it seemed like quite a big kind of proportion in my mind. I don't know why we're going for an option that goes against that. So I don't know whether Steve can give me a rationale and kind of a bit beyond what he kind of his introduction, because he didn't really go into why we're choosing this option and why this is a better option, and how would we feel if Amber Valley looked to split us in two? We wouldn't be very happy about it, would we?
Okay, well, Councillor Fisher will have a chance to respond as the mover of the motion in a few minutes. Councillor Martin Burfoot, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I'm probably not the only councillor here tonight that's in a quandary about the decision we've got to take shortly. It is a momentous one in terms of our population, both residents of Derbyshire Dales and the other, particularly the northern districts of Derbyshire. But I'm afraid I'm completely opposed in principle to the reform of a system which works reasonably well now, with a vast, remote and out-of-touch council of over 500,000 people, or even more, stretching from Glossop in the north down to Derbyshire in the south, including Chesterfield and Bolsover in the east. And probably along with Sue, I'm probably more familiar with the extreme north of Derbyshire than anybody, apart from Paul himself, who lives there. But I lived there for 10 years or so, and I worked there as well more recently. So, but they feel completely out of touch with Derbyshire or Derby, never mind with a unitary council for the whole of the county, which some people have been talking about, particularly Councillor G. So I don't think that's going to be an option that they would like to see. And in fact, it's a bit of a nonsense in a way that we're going to be, or it could be called North Derbyshire. I don't know what the alternative name would be, but certainly Derbyshire and Sudbury don't consider them as North Derbyshire, I guess. But anyway, that's a decision for the future, I imagine. So I'm going to find it difficult to vote for the so-called case for change recommendation 1. So do we have to approve those words, which I strongly disapprove of? The result would force diverse, widely spread geographic communities into a single one-size-fits-all mega council, with the number of democratically elected councillors cut drastically. For instance, Matlock and Tansey will have probably just 2 representatives, with representation per head overall reduced, I'm told, by about 2/3, fewer than any equivalent European country, the USA or Canada. Centralisation of power like this is the opposite of devolution in my mind, which I've urged for many years. It's been purely a diktat from ministers in Westminster and Whitehall, and civil servants, of course, not something proposed by Labour at the last general election even, and therefore without any democratic mandate. The public will start to notice a difference when they ask overworked councillors for help about something or somewhere unknown to them, a bit like Councillor Whitehead has been talking about really, or when the council fails to prioritise local community issues compared to addressing the huge funding gap in adult and children's care and special education needs. It must surely be a priority to protect our local identity as a rural district with a familiar name, but this would be impossible with the comments from the new unitary council, as I've pointed out, which residents will find a poor replacement for the current system, despite all its imperfections. None of the possible options being considered will have a common geographical identity, unfortunately. But assuming the government imposes their proposed new system on us, I can only say that option A in recommendation 2 looks like the least worst choice. And after that, if the final decision is to split Amber Valley into 2, I would feel that option B1 is probably better, in that the populations are identical. And Amber Valley would be split in 2, but Belper and Duffield would be together, and they've always been closely related 2 communities, and they'd be allocated to the Southern Council. But anyway, I think the best option would be option A, I think, if we have to go along with it at all. As a Matlock councillor, I am very concerned about accommodation for the new council, a challenge which cannot be resolved in time for a handover in April 2028, and certainly, in my opinion, and I think that's an impossible target anyway, which implies that like 1973 to 4, which I can fairly closely remember actually, we would inevitably need to retain existing district council and borough council offices as interim bases for several years, with different departments based at each of those offices, prior to the building probably of a mammoth new headquarters long after my time. So I found it very difficult to support what's proposed, even though we are part of a progressive alliance that's putting this forward to some extent as the least worst option. But I think I'll be willing to support option A when it comes to a vote.
Thank you. Councillor G.
Yeah, I'm actually quite invigorated by this, the representations we've had at the moment, because I'd like to put aside my issue about one council, because I think we've discussed that. In terms of Amber Valley, just to help people, I did speak to Councillor Emmis Williams, and he was very pleasant about his discussions he's had with Steve. So, and I think he's entirely wanting option A. And, you know, that's mainly because he supports Wrexham. If I was on Amber Valley, I'd be asking for option B because I support Derby County. But I'd never support any option that splits Derbyshire in half. But before they put the dog down, I'd like to speak up for the status quo, which has been put over by Councillor Barefoot in a really eloquent manner, because the root of this is basically they think we're not very good value for money. Now, I'm looking around this room and I can't see any councillor in this room who isn't value for money. You know, currently we have, I've calculated about 40 councillors, and, you know, we paid a modest allowance for the work we do. And, I've been doing this 15 years now, and when I was in Amber Valley, I've put my heart and soul into it when I talk to residents and do what they try and ask me to do and stuff like that. And, Councillor Barefoot, I used to read articles in the Matlock Mercury about her about 30 years ago. So is Councillor Barefoot, who slaughtered me at the election in May, is she value for money? Is Councillor Hobson value for money? Councillor Flitter? Because, what they're asking to change 40 councillors to 12. Now, when I was elected to Bakewell, they said he lives in Crouch, that's no good. And I love driving to Ashford and Sheldon and Overhaddon. I'm going to Overhaddon on Monday if I can find my way around it, because it's very dark at this time of year up there at 8 o'clock. But the job we do is valuable. And what price do you put on democracy? And to me, this system, what they're trying to put on us, it's a diktat. It's a political diktat by Labour government. They're trying to destroy what we have. It's lasted 50 years. And I haven't met a councillor who's very positive. I haven't seen a compelling case. Of course, I applaud Councillor Flitter for trying his best to make a good case for A1, A2, A3, or whatever it is. But there isn't one, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want the representation of people to be moved away. There's no mention made in this of where all the offices are going to be based. They haven't said, are they going to be in Chesterfield? South Derbyshire, who voted for option B, by the way, that's because they want to have Amber Valley with them, they've just passed planning permission for a new headquarters. A multi-million-pound headquarters somewhere, I don't know where it is, in Swadlincote or whatever, and yet apparently they're going to be closed down. This is taking us to the vet to put us down. Now, when I was elected for Derbyshire Dales, I was proud. I was when I was elected for Amber Valley, the people behind, councillor behind us. I'm not going to vote to shut it down. So you can forget it. I haven't got an option to vote against this. I haven't got an option to amend it. But there's no way I will support any of these options, because there's nothing compelling about it. As far as I'm concerned, it's better to stay the way we are at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Barefoot.
Thank you, Chair. I can't follow that, Councillor G, to be honest, but I'll do my best. I hope I am the value for money. Somebody mentioned about moaning on a bit. I'm going to moan on a bit. As Councillor Flitter said, earlier, LGR is being imposed on us by the government, whether we like it or not. You would think, sorry to the Labour members, but you would think that the government had got more important pressing issues to deal with at this present time, but we are where we are. I do see it as a clear centralisation of power and the decline of local democracy in this country. Decision making further removed from the public. We are here to serve as officers and councillors, as Gareth G has pointed out. We know our communities and we hope we do our best to serve them. So what are we being offered? As I see it, we're offered fewer democratically elected representatives, I think Martin pointed this out, per head of population than any equivalent European democracy. Please somebody point out if I'm wrong about that. Mega unitary authorities losing the connection with the communities and the people that we serve. No evidence that larger councils are more stable financially, and I think I would point out Birmingham at that point. I can predict that residents, as and when this happens, which it will, and at the end of the day we've got to decide what we think is the best of a dreadful set of options, but we've got to do that. I think they'll find out, as and when it happens, how remote their councils are going to be. I'm even boring myself with this analogy, but I've said it so many times, and I do say it to people. At the moment, if you phone up this council and say, my bin has not been emptied, you will speak to a person who will get in touch with Serco and sort it out. Because sometimes people come to us and we do it for them. If you ring Derbyshire, you will get called Derbyshire. You will not immediately speak to anybody who knows what you are talking about. And you kind of, and this applies to elected councillors as well. You cross your fingers, you get a number, and you hope at some point somebody is going to get back to you. Now, I do feel certain that if you ring up with an immediate crisis in terms of adult social care or children's services, you probably, I hope, you do get an immediate answer. But if it's something to do with highways, you'll get an FS number, you write it down, and you think, maybe in 4 weeks I might hear something. Or, well, maybe. Or maybe in 5 weeks I'll have to chase it up. And you hope that you've written it down, what the number is. Anyway, that's my moan. I do want to thank our officers and for the amount of time that they've spent on this reorganisation. At the end of the day, the decision we're making tonight, it has to be for what is best for our communities. We can't ignore what's happening. And I think we have to choose the best option to try and reduce the bad effects, because I'm very fearful. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I forgot to ask for. Could I have a recorded vote?
You may ask for that.
Yeah, I meant to ask for that in my...
I think you'll need a seconder for that. And it looks like you... Is that Councillor Slack? Are you seconding that, Councillor Slack?
Yeah, I will.
Oh, sorry. Okay, excellent. And we will need we don't need a vote on that, do we? We have first and second.
No, I think it's just the first.
Yes, okay, that's fine, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Hobson, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. The time and the money that this has cost, the effort of the officers, the members, the consultation, and for what? I mean, I feel that we're like on the Titanic, just moving the deck chairs round, because the Labour government will decide, they've probably already decided what they want to do. And I agree with those people that say this is just a purely political measure, and they are not thinking about the councillors, the elected councillors who work so hard for their communities. And I also want to pay tribute to, you know, our parish and town councils who get no allowance whatsoever, and that we as members, you know, work closely with.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
So I don't want to speak for long. I just wanted to bring to the debate some slightly more positive points about LGR. Overall, I think I'm agnostic on it. I can see that there are a lot of benefits, not just financial. In particular, I think I can see that there is a lot to be gained from bringing certain departments together, in particular housing and care, but also things like highways and economic development. It could be really good. The details aren't sorted yet. If it's done right, it could be done in a way that we empower the parish and town councils. It's not necessarily all doom and gloom, and let's face it, everyone in this room does have a vested interest in the outcome of this. I don't think there's anything to be gained from throwing our toys out of the pram and saying, well, we don't agree with it, so we're not going to agree on an option. I think we should agree on an option. I think those arguments are quite important. Personally, I would lean towards option A for the same reasons that I can't remember other people said. But A1 as a compromise does strike me as being quite reasonable. That's all.
Okay, so we've got some more hands raised now. Councillor Wayne first.
Thank you. Well, I like Gareth's analogy, but I feel it's like we're paying for our own death and funeral as well, because at the end of the day, that appears what we're going to be having to do. I do feel that there are slicker and smarter ways to deal with the issues of highways and social care and things like this across two areas. You know, you could do that without having to lose the identity, because, you know, what we're saying is we want to just have, I think it's 12, is it 12 councillors in this area? Well, at the end of the day, that's in the Derbyshire Dales area. Now, it's really important that we have to be identifiable, and we have to be present and know our communities. And to have that volume of people that you represent is going to be really, really difficult. Those are the issues. That's one of the issues that I've got. David made Councillor Hughes made a really good comment about the EMCA. Now, it's about getting your ducks in a row. You know, the Romans wouldn't work like this. You know, it's about building blocks and building up to something. But this government have just gone into it, the current government, have just gone into it, and they're saying, we'll do this, we'll do this. But EMCA are saying that this area is a touristy area. It's not one for investment and development. But they still want to inflict over 600 houses a year on us. And what that will do, when all these people want a day out from Derby because they're fed up of the traffic jams and they're fed up of the, you know, humdrum down there, they won't be able to get through because the roads will be blocked. That's the issue that we're going to have. If we're expected to build all these houses here, there should have been some conversation from the mayor and discussions beforehand in relation to the housing. I think the government, if they were true to themselves, should be investing their time and efforts in making the streets safer, you know, making the prisons more secure, and also making the vulnerable safer than concentrating on these sorts of things. And I don't know why it's going to be any benefit to me, Councillor Peacock, because what I'm going to do when I cease to be a councillor in 2027 or 2028, I'm going to have to wait on the phone for blinking ages to get through and get any sort of service from anybody. And that's where I see it. I think there are big issues with councillor representation, as I've said, and also we are going to lose our identity. But we will have to go away along with something. I'm not sure whether A1 is the appropriate one, but you know, I'll just wait to listen to the rest of the debate to find out what I will decide. But I'm not very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Noting the noting the strength of opinion about reduction in representation amongst in the new area from what is it, 33 to 12 councillors.
40 to 12.
No, it's 4.
Include councillors or councillors.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, 40 to 12, 39 to 12. The Liberal Democrat leader, the leader of the Liberal Democrats group in Derby City Council is proposing to increase recommend increasing the number of councillors per division in the unitary authority from 2 to 3 to in some way offset the democratic deficit that the proposal for a unitary authority introduces. And I would like to suggest that we echo that and have an amendment to our list here, which is that we wish to recommend that 3 councillors per division that there are 3 councillors for each division in the new unitary authorities. Now, I know this goes against the criteria that the government has introduced, but because the government only wants 2, but I think there is a real strength of opinion here, and I think and it will be the same right across Derbyshire and probably other proposed unitary authority areas as well, about this democratic deficit, and we need to signal to government our concern over that deficit.
That sounds like an amendment you're putting forward there, and you're the proposer of that. Do you have a seconder for that?
Are you just adding as a separate recommendation?
As a separate recommendation.
Okay, we have got a seconder for that. Okay, thank you. We've also got, I think, Councillor Archer wishing to speak.
Thanks, Jay. And obviously I'm not going to be able to vote, but I thought at least I ought to share my reasoning behind how I was going to vote. And first of all, I completely agree. I'm not going to go over all those points again, but completely agree with the points made by Councillor Burfeet, Wayne, G, and Hobson. So put that on the record. Completely agree with all those comments, but I'm not going to go through all those points again. So coming back to the nub of it in terms of A1 or A or whatever. Very finely balanced in terms of my opinion on it, but as someone who's worked in Derby for 17 years while living in the Derbyshire Dales, feel I know Derby communities pretty well as the rural communities north of Derbyshire pretty well. On balance, my reasoning for going for A1, which is what I would have done if I was able to vote, would be that I feel Belper has a lot in common with the larger market towns of Derbyshire Dales, Wirksworth, Ashbourne, Matlock, Bakewell. Belper feels like a sort of a similar set of towns with a lot in common in rural areas, rural communities, that are large enough towns to have their own identities and so on, whereas the communities that in option A1 are listed as being in the south, I see perhaps more as, I hesitate to say this because I don't want to speak on behalf of residents that I don't know and I don't live there, but we've got to make this decision. So I see those more places such as Mackworth and Quorndon, for example, as more places that would probably see themselves more like a satellite of Derby rather than that larger distinct market town such as Belper. So it was really, I don't want to make this decision. I'd rather not change the status quo, but given the choices we've got, that was my reasoning and why I was leaning towards A1 rather than just A. So I'll just put that out there and then you can consider that or not for those of you who are going to be able to vote. Thank you.
So we say we can't accept that. Councillor Dobbs, you had your hand up. I think.
Thank you. Yes, I'm coming back after having seconded this motion. And,
yeah. Okay. So this is okay. Yeah.
I'm not talking about the 2 to 3 business, which presumably would be a separate motion anyway, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Just picking up on the analogy about going to the vets, which seems to have been repeated a couple of times. Clearly, what perhaps hasn't been noticed is that actually the government, with MCA, have put us in a cage on the way to the vets. There's not much actually we can do about it. We can shout and scream and say this is a terribly bad idea, which I absolutely think, but we have to have an element of realism if we're going to do the best for our residents. Because just shouting from the cage, it's all rubbish, doesn't actually save us from our fate. In fact, it might speed it up if you follow the analogy. Anyway, to return to something which I think is much more positive, the data from a consultation, repeated, now we've got the data from the county consultation, actually does tell you something about how our residents think. And if I can start off on a very positive note that actually Councillor Flitter mentioned, and that is they think we're doing very well. I did a sort of like they do for leaders. If you add up the positives and take away the negatives and do it, you know, slightly adjusted for whether they think you're very good or just good, then we come out so far ahead of every other district or borough that it has a significant statistical difference. We are, when I do that exercise, with the average of approval about what boroughs and districts are doing, averages out at 20, we're at 46, plus 46. The nearest rival is South Derbyshire at 35. Some are negative. Some are negative about what they're doing at the moment. That is Derby and High Peak. They don't like what their boroughs are doing, but here they do. Did you see the information on page 136 about our recycling rates? I mean, it's a non-zero origin, so it emphasises it, but we're so far out and ahead of other districts and boroughs. It's a tragedy we're being dismantled, but we're in the cage. We are being dismantled, and we have to look to the future as to what the most effective way forward is. When the consultation went out, I voted emphatically for A. That was my agree totally version. I'm voting, I seconded A1, because this is being pragmatic. You've got to be pragmatic. Clearly, Derby needs space to expand in the north. They will have a very loud voice to government which will emphasise that. There's no point in fighting against those things for the sake of being heard. You've got to be realistic. That will be the way the wind's blowing. Better that than actually it to go with B because we made a fuss and just stamped our feet and said, no, you can't have Belper or whatever. This is a compromise. Compromises are important. So, well done to officers and staff for actually delivering services that our residents appreciate. A pity we can't carry on doing it, but of course those same officers will be part, doubtless, of the new teams which will be in the unitary that is created. And they can take it good practice forward. So I think, well, I hope that you will support A1, not because it might be the ideal in your mind, but because it's a sensible compromise in the view of what others are going to support. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I shan't speak too long. Firstly, we've got, same as Councillor Dobbs says, we've got to be realistic. We've got 4 tiers of government now, parish council, districts, county and unitary authority above. It's got to be realistic, and as I said, Wordsworth many years ago, when the district council were formed, didn't want to be part of the Derbyshire Dales. They wanted to, with close relations, we're only 5 miles from Belper, close relations with Belper in that area, and they wanted to join the Andover Valley, but to make the numbers right for Derbyshire Dales, Wordsworth had to join the Derbyshire Dales. Anyway, it's all history. Derbyshire Dales is a successful council, there's no disputing that. But just coming back to some of the issues which have been spoken about, this has been going on for quite a while before Labour have come to power. Manchester's one of the successors. Well, it's a big area, but it's one of the successors. This has been going on for quite a while. And unitary is a good way to work, really, actually. There's a lot of advantage out of unitary. Looking at the 4 options, I'm going to support the leader that option A1 is the one. Because it's A1, A's all right, but A1 would bring in areas which we require to make the northern area strong. Belper, Alfred and Summercoats and Ripley are very industrial areas, economic-wise as well, and they would make the north stronger. So it is a correct way to go by A1, really. A1, yeah, it's a great way to go. So I would go for that. And I think regarding Derbyshire, as comments have been made about Derbyshire, about ringing up, Derbyshire's county council has been a disaster, we all know that. They nearly went bankrupt, so we don't want Derbyshire running the issue, no way. So I think what the leader has proposed, I'm going to support, and I encourage everybody else to be realistic and look at it seriously and support 1A.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor G, you have got your hand up. I'm aware you've spoken once already on this.
Yeah,
So
I just want to correct a slight perception. For those in the room who are minded to vote to split Derbyshire, Amber Valley are most likely to want to have option A because, of course, it doesn't split their area in half. So what I'm hearing here is that you guys want to split Amber Valley in half. Of course, you didn't want to split Derbyshire Dales in half, but you're happy to see Amber Valley split in half. But in terms of tactical voting, if you wanted to help your partner, option A would be better if you're going down that road. And in terms of giving power to the northern area, splitting part of it off gives less power because option A is the one that keeps Amber Valley together. It fits the government criteria. You don't have to bring the Minister of State into it. And I'm fairly certain that is the one. So, because at the end of the day, this will come down to what everybody else decides. So I think that needs some clarity there, because obviously when I look at option A1, it's splitting Amber Valley right down, not the middle exactly, but I'm slightly, because I live in Amber Valley, you see, so I know the area quite well.
All right, thank you. Oh yes, Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. I'm coming from this from a slightly different angle, because obviously a few years ago when we were at county, there was talk about unitaries then, and of course the savings that could be made with the model that they were discussing at the time, which they called the donut and whatever, which I'm not advocating tonight or whatever. But seeing each year when we were setting the budgets for the forthcoming year and whatever, the two problem areas that's been mentioned tonight was adult social care and young people services, statutory services, which we have to deliver. It doesn't matter if it blows the budget, and it usually always did. And so when we started hearing about this unitary proposal and the possible savings and whatever, I was mindful that, in a sense, it was the only game in town, because, you know, where were we going to find the funds to bolster these services and make them happen each year? And it was getting more and more difficult. We're spending money on reserves. I don't believe those services were particularly badly run, from what we were told. The demand for them was outstripping the actual monies that we were actually collecting, and we were making cost savings each year, which were incredible, but it wasn't quite enough. I can't see anything changing going forward, and I can't see how this government is going to be able to support us if we ever need it. So I think we need to be masters of our own destiny. We're going to be a unitary, I know that. I hear about the democracy, and I'm really sad about that as well. But I'm really fearful about our finances in the next 4 or 5 years. Who said we're in a cage? We definitely are in a cage, and somebody's throwing the key away. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't got a problem with option A1, and I'll probably support that. But I'm looking at it from the financials, and I'm, you know, sadly playing down the other issues, which are very good and need considering, but I do worry about our finances. Thank you.
Now, unless there's any... Oh, Councillor, I keep saying unless there's anyone else who wants to speak and then somebody puts their hand up. Fantastic. Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I think, just wanted to reflect really, I think we all love this area, and I think if we just want to know that whoever we hand this over to, it's going to be someone who cares for it as much as we do. And I think everyone in the room, no matter what your political creed, I think we all care. We all argue about how we care about it in our different ways, but I think we do all care. And I think that's what we're all trying to show here. And I think, unfortunately, this argument is more about a rational one. And unfortunately, because it's being put to us as that, I think A1 is the way to go for that rational argument, as Dermot and others have said. And so even though we might not want to make that decision, and it is an emotional decision that we don't want to make, but it is the rational one because that is what's put before us. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other hands? Oh, Councillor Ball.
Yeah, it is a big deliberation of what we've got to choose. I've always said before, I don't feel why we should be making decisions for other areas because we're not the ones who are running that area. We're running Derbyshire Dales. And I can remember a few years back we wanted it just to be Derbyshire Dales as the unitary thing. But I'm just a bit concerned. We're looking at splitting Amber Valley and what have you. And if you look on the map, on a north-south divide, well, you could go halfway across, right across Derbyshire Dales, which would then take out part of Derbyshire Dales' south side, which incorporates Derbyshire, Doveridge and Sudbury and Ashbourne and the likes. So where are we standing on that? I know there's not an option there, but, you know, the government was stipulating about not splitting boundaries and what have you. But I'm quite concerned that areas should be kept as close and knit together as possible for the benefit of the residents, because we're all sitting here and, all right, some of us are probably saying, oh, well, I'm going to lose my seat because there's not going to be a position for me to be had within this unitary thing. But so what? It's just the fact that, you know, they cut the seats down to 34 from 39 before, and they will do, and I understand the finances to trying to do that. But even as we are struggling with every year we come, and Karen presents us with the medium term, and then we're looking into the future as regards, and we've got to make a saving on this and making a saving on that. But we would have to be doing a completely different service all round as a unitary. And how many other councils, and by what we've been told, half of these other councils aren't as good as Derbyshire Dales. And I'm really pleased that we are the top and utmost council that is helping and supporting our residents. And I just feel sorry that we've been put in a position to have to be making a point and saying we support this or that, which is not our residents that are going to be involved with it, which I'm just a bit concerned with. A1, maybe, and I understand the logic of where you're coming from of wanting Belper and Alfreton and the likes, and I can see that on part of it. But I'm still very, very concerned to the fact that we're splitting an actual district or borough on the Amber Valley side. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is we're putting these forward. Yeah, okay, we said we wanted to be round the table to do it, to be part of and have a say. But I didn't realise we were all going to be having a say individually, yet making decisions for other councils. When I thought we were all coming round the table, and I know it's been the CEO and I know it's been the leader of the councils that have been doing this, But for us after sitting here to make it, as Amber Valley and Old South Derbyshire the other night have had to do the same, they're making decisions for other areas. And I think that's wrong. I think we should have been all as a collaborative, possibly, to have made that decision and shown that we want to work together and not just doing it as just the leaders, but having half of the councillors being able to speak to each other and not have hearsay from this and from that and putting the pros and cons forward. But if we've got to be part of it, I'm still not quite sure whether A1 is the right one. I think A would be better, keeping all of Amber Valley together. But it all bears down. I don't think we'll save that much money in the long run, because a bigger population, we're going to end up needing more schools, more healthcare, more social care and adult care. So I think this idea of saving money is not what this is going to turn around. This, to me, is a full political banter of making sure that a certain party have dictatorship all over the country. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead, you've spoken once already, but is it a brief
Yes, I'll just be
intervention?
brief, Chair. It's just because I've got the Amber Valley paper in front of me, and I just thought I'd share something from it, because their recommendation is option A, not option A1. And there's just something in there that I think members here should hear. So they say Amber Valley members should note 24%, a quarter of the people who responded to the consultation were from Amber Valley, even though Amber Valley only makes up 11.9% of the overall population. And of course, what we know in our own pack, 54% of people in Amber Valley wanted option A, and only 23% wanted option A1. So I'm a bit puzzled why we think we have the right to overrule what the Amber Valley citizens clearly want.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Putting economics aside, one inevitable consequence of this new reorganisation is that we will be excluding younger people from becoming councillors, because the areas that they're going to have to cover, they're essentially producing a salaried position. People just won't be able to do that and work, and the councils will become older fuddy-duddies like most of us here. So that's just a consequence that I see as just being a further disadvantage of the system, because the complaints have always been, as long as I've been on the council, when I was a young councillor, is that younger people are not taking part in councils, and this will make it even harder for them to even consider it.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on this issue of if people vote for A1, that we're voting to split a different district. As far as I understand it, whatever we vote for tonight is not going to be imposed upon everybody else. All the districts and boroughs are having their own votes. Some will vote one way, some will vote the other, and the government will make their own mind up based on whatever information they get. So I think it's important to say that whatever we vote for tonight has to be the best that we feel for Derbyshire Dales residents, because they're the ones who pay us, they're the ones we represent. And Amber Valley councillors will do exactly the same for their residents as South Derbyshire have done, and so on. So I think it's important to point out that whatever we decide tonight will not necessarily be imposed upon everybody else. It just goes into the pot, and the government will do whatever the government does.
Councillor Boynton, you had your hand raised.
Thank you. Although not on the table tonight, there's obviously been talk of splitting Derbyshire Dales into two. Certainly the residents of Derbyshire Sudbury were pleased to be called North Derbyshire. And if we were to split it into, if it was on the table, I would hope that this council, the remainder of Derbyshire Dales, would support the southern area in remaining in Derbyshire Dales. moving on from that, I think that in the same vein, we should support the residents of Amber Valley who seemingly want to stay as one. And certainly the residents down in my area, they see it as it's actually not any of our business as to whether it splits or not. And from that, I deduct that we should be supporting Amber Valley.
Thank you. Okay, I think we really are at the end of hands raised. Can I just take advice on the amendment that's been put forward for a second? Okay, so is that form of words acceptable?
Comment? Yes, Chair, if I could just make a comment on that point. The case for change that's before Council tonight is a case for change which clearly is not just one that we're being asked to express a view on, but it's a case for change that all authorities have received, and it's not really within the remit of this Council to change that case for change document. What I would suggest is that if the amendment proposed by Councillor Hughes to give a view from Derbyshire Dales District Council regarding the level of member representation moving forward is passed, that the recommendation is framed in the form that we make a separate written submission to the Secretary of State to say that whilst Derbyshire Dales has proposed option, whatever you're going to propose, in addition to that, we make a separate Derbyshire Dales representation on the issue of democratic representation. And then that would go into the same considerations, because I don't think unilaterally we can change any of the options that are in the case for change, rather being asked to agree to them or disagree to them. So if there's an additional point, I think we need to make it separately as Derbyshire Dales.
Okay, I mean, I've captured a form of words there, but you may well have another one.
Chair, can I come back on that just a little bit? Can we also circulate that to other district councillors and to Derbyshire City Council as well, because that letter may find support in the other district councils, should it be passed here.
Okay, Councillor, this is on this particular issue. Councillor Dobbs.
Yes, Chair, I would advocate to make this a separate motion, because I would like to talk to it as a separate motion, because it is tied up with the whole business about devolving out from the unitary into local assemblies and the like, which is discussed in the white paper. So I think it's tied up, and of course I do worry if we just did this straightforward multiplier, 2 to 3, then actually the size of the unitary council is now going to be seriously big.
All right, and a separate motion of course would require 10 days notice. Councillor G.
Yeah, if we're going to do this motion on the increase in representation, could we make it 4 rather than 3? Because it's nowhere near enough anyway, but 4 would be 24. And that is getting closer to something that would be more or less acceptable.
Right, okay, this is, I think what we're doing here is opening a bit of a can of worms, which does need further exploration, shall we say. Councillor Hughes, are you willing to take this back and propose it at a later stage?
I think we're in the meeting now, we're discussing this point. I think we take it as an amendment to the existing motion. It's an addition to the existing set of recommendations, and it doesn't in any way negate any of the recommendations. Therefore, I believe it's a valid amendment.
All right. Can I read out what I've got here, just to make sure that we understand what I think?
On the point of 3 to 4, I think I'm minded to stay with 3 for the time being, because I think it's more likely to get through than 4 with government.
All right. Okay. 12 jobs there. All right. Okay. So what I've got here, this is following Paul Wilson's comments there. This is a 5th recommendation, that the Council makes a separate written submission to the Secretary of State for consideration of 3 councillors per division in the new unitary authority. I think that's what you were getting at, and I believe that's what Councillor Whitehead was seconding.
Yeah, second. I mean, in my mind, I don't think we have. I mean, I think we can talk about the democratic sort of deficiency in the new makeup. I don't think we have to say we need to be 3 or 4. Surely we're just posing the question back to the Secretary of State. Could he be minded in rural communities where the wards are going to be very big, that maybe having a limit of 2 councillors may not be appropriate? I think maybe we frame it like that rather than try and us dictate what we think the number should be.
Well, I'm going to need a proper amendment on this, so we do need some clarity here from the proposer and the seconder.
Well, I'm happy to go with what David wants, but I was just thinking, we get ourselves wrapped up in numbers, we don't need to on this particular thing. It's about the point.
I think the point is made in the number, and we're putting a recommendation forward. Whether government accepts that or not, it's making the point that we want more representation. I think, so I'd leave it. Having a concrete number is easier to argue than just a statement that we want more representation.
You might come back and say, well, actually, yeah, I agree, but 10% more would be beneficial, so it wouldn't be what you want.
I'm going to have to press you on a decision here.
It's insisting on putting a number in, and we'll go with a number. That's fine.
Okay, Councillor Flitter.
I was just going to say, I would support the view of Councillor Whitehead in the way that we proceed with this, and it could be included within the original motion.
Not as I read it. The original motion is very clear on the numbers, whereas Councillor Whitehead's had a sort of a it was, we'd like more in rural areas if possible, please.
Well, I think it was asking the Secretary of State to be minded in terms of actually, is he taking democracy away from rural communities?
We need clear wording. Yeah. Councillor Wayne.
You're not actually making a statement that you want these things, are you? As in the actual recommendations, it specifies numbers. What you're doing is you're putting a recommendation 5 in that says we would also like consideration given to more representation due to the impact of councillors having to go to 6 parish council meetings, because these people who drive these desks will not know that some of these councillors have to go to 6 or 7 parish councils.
12, yes.
Yeah, well, but this is what we need to do. So I don't think it's that big an issue on that. You're not dictating that it takes place. What you're doing is you're asking that it goes forward. That's so I don't think you're actually specifying a number. You're just asking.
Okay, I have another form of words here, although it's not my motion. The Council makes a separate written submission to the Secretary of State calling for more representation in rural areas in the new unitary authority. Does that capture what members are seeking?
Can I come back?
Yes.
But I don't think it's only rural areas. It's because this came from Derby City Council, the Liberal Democrat group in Derby City Council, and Derby City is probably characterised as an urban area, and I think the democratic deficit exists in urban areas just as it exists in rural areas, and what we want to do is in some way demonstrate that we are concerned about that democratic deficit, and I take Councillor G's point that 24 would be better than 18, but it's still not 39. So we'll still have a democratic deficit, and it is far, far bigger democratic deficit than you'll get in any other European country. So I think we are on a hiding to nothing in terms of democracy going with 12, and I think putting forward anything other than another number will not actually have any force. So we need to consider the democratic deficit across the board. And I do agree that for 12 councils, how you get to 12 councils in each month will be very difficult to achieve. But it's not only the councils, it's individual residents as well that need to be represented. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor G on this matter?
It's on the main matter.
Well, you've had your say on that.
It was just something that's come up on the main matter.
because I've been actually changed in this debate, which is great, isn't it? Because I've sat here. But I just wanted to make a technical point, because we had a proposal from the leader of the council at the beginning, which was seconded for A1. But I've noticed there is a call in this council to have some solidarity with Amber Valley. And that seems to be quite reasonably widespread. So I would like to say that I've changed because I feel that the best thing I can do this evening is to support our neighbouring county. And also I want to allay any possibility that the government might take some sort of encouragement that splitting boroughs or district councils in half is something that can be achieved, as Councillor Boynton and Councillor Bull has possibly adhered to. So I'm really like to call the fact that I've gone away from my idea of shouting out the cage, as Councillor Dobbs said, and I want to have some solidarity with the people of Amber Valley and support their preferred option.
Okay, all right. Paul, I believe you've managed to put together a form of words which might satisfy councillors.
Based on my interpretation of the debate so far, Chair, clearly we have a motion on the table from Councillor Flitter in terms of the recommendations in the report, but identifying option A, brackets A1, as the preferred option. We then have an amendment from Councillor Hughes, which, if I've interpreted correctly, would be something along the lines of that Derbyshire Dales District Council submit an individual representation to the Secretary of State to advocate increased representation of X, however many, elected members per division in the creation of any new unitary authorities. And it's for members to determine what X represents, whether it's 3, 4 or whatever. But I think that is the gist of what I've heard on the amendment.
Right, okay. The mover and seconder, do you have an X?
Go on, let's go 3.
3, okay. That sounds like it's the motion before us then. So this is an amendment before we come back to the final motion. So do we all understand what the amendment is that we're voting for? No. Okay, that's a very fair point. Right, can we have that form of words again, please?
So the amendment is that you have the recommendations in the report, 1, 2, but option 2 is that the option is to be voted on option A, brackets A1, 3 to give delegated authority and 4 to give delegated authority as per the report. And then the 5th recommendation would be that Derbyshire Dales District Council submit an individual representation to the Secretary of State to advocate increased representation of 3 elected members per division in the creation of any new unitary authorities.
Okay, do we all understand what we're voting on now then? So this is an amendment first of all, and then we come back to the substantive motion.
Are we allowed to vote on the amendment?
That's a good question. Kerry? One moment, please.
I just think that it is on 19.
While Kerry is just checking that, I'd just like to say a few words. I mean, those of you who are avid watchers of the Traitors may be hoping to get back for 9 o'clock tonight, and I just noticed that in some sense we're doing the same kind of thing, in that we're making decisions here about other people in other rooms. But I won't dwell on that too much. I mean, it is a historic decision. We've heard about putting people in cages, and we've heard about the Romans wouldn't have started here. So it is historic. But my point to you is that if we don't make a decision tonight on these options, then we will lose our influence on the decision-making process with the government, at least up to the 28th of November. We've got some more hands in the air. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I'm being a little bit dim. You've explained very clearly about the numbers of councillors, but that's tagged on to that first bit, isn't it?
It is.
So is this the one with splitting Amber Valley, or is this the one?
No, it's councillors in Derbyshire Dales. This is.
Okay.
So what are we
first
voting?
of all, we're voting on the amendment. Okay.
Sorry?
And then secondly, we're voting on the 4 recommendations there, but with the motion as proposed by Councillor Flitter, which is in favour of A1, A1. So that is a split of Amber Valley. Yeah.
We are voting for that.
The current vote is on the amendment, which is the one which Kerry is just checking to see whether Councillor Archer
This is the
can vote.
amendment to have 18 instead of 12.
Purely that, purely that.
This, yes, that's not 18. No, it's 3.
Yeah, but 3 times 6 is 18.
Yeah, well, your maths is right.
But it's purely on that number.
That's what we're voting on now.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. Chair, if I can clarify again. The motion on the table from Councillor Flitter is for the recommendations in the report, but with option A, brackets A1 selected for council to determine whether that is this council's preferred option.
No, wait, now we want a recorded vote on the preferred
All right, all right.
option.
Yeah. Let him
Let me
finish.
deal with the amendments. So that's the motion that's on the table from Councillor Flitter.
Yeah.
Councillor Hughes has moved an amendment to that, which adds an additional recommendation regarding representation in the new unitary structures, which is, as I read out, that Derbyshire Dales District Council submit...
Yeah, we've got that. So after that, we go back to the main motion.
Don't please.
So the 5th recommendation, or the amendment, is that the Derbyshire Dales District Council submit an additional representation to the Secretary of State to advocate increased representation of 3 elected members per division in the creation of any new unitary authorities. So if the amendment is passed, that amendment includes option A, A1 as proposed by Councillor Flitter. So you are voting on all of the original motion plus the amendment.
Point of order, isn't it? If the amendment is passed, then we go back and vote for on the original motion and 5. But if we then want to change it so that we go for A rather than A1, we can propose that as another amendment, can we not?
It is still possible, yes, that's right.
So we can have another amendment. Having voted for this amendment, can we go back and vote for another amendment?
The amendment that is being proposed is effectively to move from 4 recommendations to 5.
Yeah.
If that amendment is lost, then you go back to Councillor Flitter's original motion that's on the table.
But even if it's passed, we still have to go back to, and then we vote for all of them again, don't we?
No. Because it's all of it. All of it plus that. Yeah.
I think this is getting muddy in the waters and taking it away from the proper motion. I'm quite willing to accept that if we do not look at a specific number and we're asking the Secretary of State to look at the number of councillors in our area to be put, to be considered, then that should be enough. And that should be part of the motion that we could accept. We're making life very difficult for ourselves here.
Okay, so as the proposer of the original motion, you're accepting
If we don't put a specific number and you're asking the Secretary of State to consider it, you're achieving the same and it makes it a damn sight easier to vote on.
Okay. All right, okay. I think that's acceptable to members. Have we...
It would have to be a significant increase in the number of councillors per division. Not 10%, for example.
If we can't agree on this in relation to this amendment, I believe the amendment can't be considered as part of the main motion, can it? What's the way?
Yeah, I think the pivotal thing that Councillor Hobson and Councillor G were getting at was the fact that we're going to be voting on the amendment, and the amendment was for A1. That's
No. Let's have some clarity from Kerry.
Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, there's just a couple of things that I've got outstanding to clarify, and I'll just go to the two councillors who've been waiting patiently to see whether they can vote. However, it is voted. And, the rules of procedure 19.5 is clear that it is for the whole item, including the officer's introduction. So, yeah, unfortunately, that does negate you from being able to vote. However, this vote proceeds. So just to give my sort of idea of how this motion, we've got a motion on the table which was from Councillor Flitter. That is the substantive motion that is then subsequently being amended to add in resolution 5. So that's what you're voting on. So the substantive motion from Councillor Flitter with the amendment to add in resolution 5. If that motion fails, then it goes back to Councillor Flitter's 1 to 4 motion. That to me is how the voting is going, which is how we normally do with amendments. So I do think that has made it clear for members.
Yeah, point of order again. I mean, when we've done this before, we vote on an amendment, and then we have to vote on the substantive motion, including the amendment if it's passed. So we have a second vote.
Yes.
Yeah. So in between the vote on the amendment and the second vote, can we introduce another amendment?
We should note it.
Yeah.
I think the room is trying to look at the difference between voting for option A on its own or A1. So I think there needs to be some clear instruction how we could vote for either A or A1.
I can't get down to it.
No, that's not the case.
So I'd have to turn down the first
yes,
one and then come back to it?
You have to turn down the whole thing, actually. Councillor Whitehead.
So I think what we're trying to achieve is that we're trying to add an extra recommendation, regardless of what Steve has proposed. We'd like this 5th recommendation. So it's almost like this should have happened prior to Steve making his recommendation. We should have added this as an extra recommendation for the whole meeting. Could I just recommend, would it simplify things if we just voted on each recommendation individually? So then, because then if we want to vote down option A1, we've got an opportunity to do it.
That is an option, yes. Okay, all right. So, Councillor Bull, before I come back to Councillor Potter. Yeah.
Point of order. We talk about recommendation 1. That was not in my recommendation. So the case of change, I didn't put that in.
Okay. It sounds to me like we're looking for separate votes on 1, 2, and 2 as it has been proposed for amendment by Councillor Flitter and seconded. Separate vote on 3, separate vote on 4, and separate vote on 5, and recorded votes on all of those. Councillor Paul.
Can I just ask, when we had our briefing, initially we were told there wasn't going to be any recommendations put before us in the report, and we were coming to choose options A, B, C, D, or A1, A2, whatever, and they're there. Now, to me, that's what I come to vote on, one way or another tonight. So I think recommendation 2, however it reads on there, I think that should be voted on one way or another by somebody proposing either option A, option B, or option A1, and leave it at that. And I would prefer it that way for all of the councillors to do that, and then the other recommendations, which is something completely different altogether, can be added at a separate time.
Okay.
Because
now
I think then everybody knows what we're actually voting for.
So I've outlined the way I think this should now go, which is a recorded vote on each of the 5 points, and point 2 as motion proposed and seconded, with option A, A1 as the preferred one of the council. That's my understanding.
Does it have to be a recorded vote on each of them? Can we not just do a recorded vote on the one that matters?
Which one is that for you?
That would be recommendation 2.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the councillor who asked for a recorded vote, which I think was Councillor G?
Yes, so
yeah.
The recorded vote is on whether I'm choosing A or A1.
Yeah, okay, got it. No, it's A1 or nothing. you have no other choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do we all understand what we're about to vote on? Councillor Dobbs.
Well, I do have a right to reply, Leader.
Yeah, no, Chair. I'm slightly mystified as how you're going to interpret the result if we're going to go through them in turn. I mean, is the largest number wins? What is it?
No, we're not going to go through the options within 2. Item 2 on the agenda is that the Council approves the preferred option for local government reorganisation as option A1. That's what you've put forward.
Well, A1 I
yeah.
put forward.
Well,
yeah.
it says on here A1, yeah. Councillor Flitter, you're right to reply and sum up.
God, thank you. Well, I don't know whether this is the end of this saga or whether it's the beginning, to be quite honest. I have tried to keep politics out of this because, as I've said at the beginning, my priority was the people of Derbyshire Dales and getting the best option for them. I just wanted, Councillor G just mentioned, you know, where the head offices would be and where I think with A, we're in a better position to keep our facilities in Matlock because it makes us more central. But that's another argument for the new incumbents. Just to clarify, my preference is option A, to support the Amber Valley and the rest of North Derbyshire, the 4 out of 6. Failing that, we let in the Minister of State, Secretary of State, realise that if that's not going to be considered by the Secretary of State, we are open to look at A1, which has the backing of the leader of Amber Valley. It was him that has drawn a lot of these lines, and he argued his case right the way through. He's argued his case to not include in B, that includes Belper. But he is willing to recognise that the land that adjoins Derby in the southern areas of Amber Valley could be argued to be more facing than in the north. He doesn't like it, as we don't like it, but it's a reality that if we don't get what we want, then we'll make a compromise of sorts. But if he's happy at that, I'm saying that we vote for A, but if we have any comeback that we're definitely not going to get A, then we look for the best possible we can for the people of Amber Valley. So I've got the right to reply, Gareth. You're not allowed to speak again. You vote now. No, I have not. It's a misunderstanding, and I'm responding to Nick, who wanted the clarification. And I did not. In my notes here, I've supported A/A1. And that is the preferred option is A, and the fallback is A1.
Chair, point of order. Point of order here.
Let's have some patience here, please, members.
Point of order. The third point on this in this list. Third point in this list is option A as a base option, requesting modification to option A1, and I took Councillor Flitter's motion as that third option.
Quiet, please.
That third option, not the first option, with the third as a fallback. So I think we need to have a firm statement of what the motion is before we can vote on it, because it's not clear.
I understand that.
We've got to choose A or A1. And Councillor Williams, his favourite one is A.
Well, that's lovely to hear.
Today.
Can we have a statement of clarity, please, from the proposer and seconder of the motion about what they are actually wishing to see here as this recommendation too?
I've already said that my option A is the most favoured one, but the fallback is A1.
Okay. Can we hear from
Why can't people understand?
Councillor Dobbs, would you like to perhaps clarify this?
I would, Chair. To pivot, my suggestion, my words were A1, and for the following reason, because I don't think we're going to get A through. Because that's the pragmatism here. It's all very well saying supporting Amber Valley, but in fact, if you look at what Derbyshire Dales residents, if you dive down into the data, in fact, we were pretty neutral about A or B, which basically says we didn't overall particularly concern ourselves with what Amber Valley were going to do. We didn't like the idea of division. That's true, you can get that out of the data. But if you accept that dividing...
Point of order. We've had two different motions from the proposer and the seconder.
Unclear about...
They're not consistent with one another. Please, can we have a motion? Would one of the officers be able to prepare a motion which approaches Steve Flitters?
Pardon?
Okay, at this precise stage, I'm not clear what the proposal is for recommendation 2. Now, we had a proposer and a seconder, but there is a lack of clarity here.
We haven't got a seconder, Chair, because the seconder proposed something completely different.
Okay, all right.
No, it isn't.
Right, okay. Councillor Buttle.
Thank you. I did actually want to second this as A/A1, and I failed to note that Peter Dobbs, in his introduction to his seconding, was just the A1 section. So I'm very happily second Steve with his A/A1 proposal, if that helps move things forward.
Well, it may do if we understand what we're voting on. Is this the third bullet point down?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Now, look, I just want some clarity from the proposers of the motion here. Are we looking at the third bullet point down on this list in item 2?
I'm struggling to see what because we're not looking at the council paper. We're looking at the motion that I put down.
Yes, well, we want to know what that motion is, I'm afraid, because it's not clear to members at the moment whether the motion is for option A or option A as a base option requesting modification to A1.
The motion is for A, but realising if we're not going to get it...
That's not what's on the paper here.
Well, I'll...
Wait, please.
Doesn't matter.
Chair,
could I propose it?
Please, let's just hear from Paul. We can come back in a second.
If I can bring some clarity to what members have been asked to consider. So, the case for change identifies 4 options. Option A, option B, option A1, option B1. If you look at the legal advice in the report, it's very clear in that it says the advice from the Secretary of State and the guidance says that they will invite proposals under the current legislation for options which include whole district boundaries as the base option. However, there is also provision within the legislation for a council to say that there is a base option, but actually we would like the Secretary of State to exercise the powers that he has to consider a modification to a proposal which doesn't involve using whole district boundaries. That is effectively A1 and B1. So the council will have to decide which of the 4 options it wishes to put forward as its preferred case for change. So Councillor Flitter's point that he's supportive of option A, the issue for consideration is option A can be the base option, but if you want to propose option A1, then it's the 3rd bullet point in the paper that you need to opt for. I hope that brings some clarity.
Members, are these questions that you have? Councillor Wayne.
Thanks for that clarification, but when I read this, option A as a base option, requesting modification to option A1. So that infers that you are you like A, but you want really wanting A1.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is A1, and I don't particularly want A1, if I'm honest. Well, thank you.
Councillor G, briefly.
Yeah, could I just propose a clear option that the council selects option A? And I'd like a seconder, please.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead.
Well, I would have seconded that, because to me that's really straightforward. We're not mixing options. We're going to recommend an option that hopefully the most of the council want, which is option A. And we've got ourselves tied into knots for absolutely no reason at all. So if we just have a reset moment, re-propose it, like Gareth just suggests, I'm happy to second it on option A. Let's have a vote. If people don't like option A, then we can re-propose it and we can vote for option A1.
I've just proposed it, option A, and now I've got to second it. So now could we vote?
We've got a motion for A1. Yeah. Okay, my apologies, but on this we already have a motion on the table for A1.
Apparently it's not. It's for A/A.
The proposer and the seconder want A1.
No, A and A.
Right, okay.
It turns out we all misunderstood Steve's original motion, including the seconder.
Okay.
So we need another motion.
Chair, so the motion, okay, so in that case then we do have a motion, which is for A, purely for A. Right.
So we've got a motion that I've proposed.
Sorry, the motion is proposed and seconded.
Can I just make something point here? We're not. The thing being is,
Quiet, please.
when Councillor Flitter proposed his proposal, he wanted option A. But at the time, Councillor Dobbs seconded it, putting in A1. So there was a confliction between the proposer and the seconder of what the actual proposal was, because we should have had A, B, C, D. We could get confused then by anything. But at the end of the day, if you talk to the leader has been involved with it. I think maybe the chair and the CEO and the top table have a discussion. We all have a 5-minute break and come to making sure that we know what we're voting on, because this is becoming an absolute
Okay.
And I'm afraid I thought we were better than that. But 1 minute we're saying one thing, and next minute, when everybody's been talking, we're saying we shouldn't be splitting Amber Valley. Now, Councillor Flitter's just said he doesn't want to do that. He wants to support Amber Valley. He wants to keep all the districts together. So I feel we should have a break, and we come back, and a fresh proposal is put on the table. All proposals are wiped out. You take it all back. We're not going through any debate because we know where we're at.
We're not going to wipe the slate clean, but we will have a 5-minute break to restore clarity. Okay.
Chair, before we do,
I'm on a motion to extend.
A point of order. If the proposer and seconder can't agree on a motion, which they haven't done, then there is no motion on the table.
Well, there is.
So if we now have a motion from Gareth and Nick Whitehead, then we have a motion to vote on.
But we're just going to have a break for 5 minutes just to clarify this. I need to extend the meeting with your agreement for that to take place. All those in favour, please show.
What are we voting on?
Extension. Extension. Yeah. Thank you. We are extended for five minutes only.
Chair, can we have a separate vote on recommendation 1?
Oh,
I find it very difficult to support that.
We're out of session at the moment.
Yeah, let's.
What's going on here?
I think what about I think I missed it as well. I thought it was
Easy to
and
go.
I think
To speak. Okay. He's already summed up.
A number won't go through, so we want to just.
It's a significant. To resume again, thank you for your patience on this one. We've got some clarity, I think, now. We're going to take the 5 recommendations, this is including the new one, as separate votes. We'll do them in order, and I will ask at point 2 for the proposer and the seconder just to restate which of those 3 bullet points they are supporting. Okay. So the first recommendation is that the council considers and approves the case for change for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire. Can I see all those in favour, please, raising their hands? So I think that's 5.
I'm not sure. I didn't do that.
Okay. We're voting on recommendation 1, that council considers and approves the case for change for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire. All those in favour, please show. Okay, we've got that. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? 3. And what's the result of that, please?
12 for, 12 against, 3 abstentions.
So does that mean that I have a casting vote?
You can choose to use it, Chair, yes.
This is not saying we agree with LGR. This is saying we agree with the economic case that's been put from a different option.
We have to go with what's in front of us. Yes. Thank you. That's right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I think it just means that we agree with them.
So I'm going to cast my vote against the case for change. Okay. Second item then.
There's no point talking about the rest because they depend on there being a case for change.
No, not necessarily. No.
That's the evidence base for the other option. Well, that's good then.
No, that's not how I read it, I'm afraid. We have a proposer and a seconder for item 2, recommendation 2. Councillor Flitter, you're proposing
A1.
A1. Councillor Dobbs, you're seconding?
3rd bullet point, yeah.
A1. Okay. This is the one where we've had a request for a recorded vote. Can we now carry that out, please? So, can we see... sorry, first, Councillor
Councillor Bates?
Against.
Councillor Boynton?
Against.
Councillor Bond?
For.
Councillor Bull?
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot? Councillor Sue Burfoot? Councillor Butcher?
For.
Councillor Buttle?
For.
Councillor Chapman?
For.
Councillor Dobbs?
For.
Councillor Edwards-Walker.
Against.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Franks.
For.
Councillor G.
Against.
Councillor Greatorex.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
Against.
Councillor Linthwaite.
For.
Councillor Murphy.
For.
Councillor Nash.
Abstain.
Councillor Peacock.
For.
Councillor Ripton.
Abstain.
Councillor Shelley.
Abstain.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
And Councillor Wilson.
For.
Yeah, that is carried. Option A1 is the preferred option. So item 3, recommendation 3, can we have all those in favour? This is that Council delegates authority to the Chief Executive to submit the Council's preferred option for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire to the Secretary of State on or before 28th of November. All those in favour, please show. Okay. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's clearly carried. And then the 4th item, that Council delegates authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to make any minor or technical amendments to the proposal prior to its submission by 28th of November deadline. All those in favour of item 4, recommendation 4, please show. All those against, please show. And once again, any abstentions? Okay. And then the 5th recommendation, Paul, which I know you have there. I favour your form of wording, I think.
That Derbyshire District Council submit an individual representation to the Secretary of State to advocate increased representation of 3 elected members per division in the creation of any new unitary authorities.
Chair, I think we were in. Councillor Whitehead and I came to a conclusion that it would be better to have a substantial increase in representation rather than a number.
Is that the case, Councillor Whitehead?
It's absolutely the case.
Thank you. So we know what we're voting on? Yes? Okay. All those in favour of recommendation 5, please show. Okay. And against? I believe that's 4. And abstentions? Okay. That motion is clearly carried, recommendation. Members, thank you very much for quite a lengthy debate, perhaps a bit longer than we thought. But we got there in the end.
Don't say.
Good night.
done. We're a minute into extra time.
Oh, right.